The game of the weekend in the Big Ten, arguably nationally, will be walking distance from our Big Ten Network studios. Wisconsin and Notre Dame at Soldier Field. We're supposed to play at Lambeau, remember last year. Two top 20 teams, two passionate fan bases. Should be an incredible scene on the shores of Lake Michigan. And that gets us to our big interview, and it is none other than the head coach of the Badgers, Paul Chryst, kind enough to join us, the first ever guest on Big Ten Today. This is a position of great esteem, Coach.
Yeah, I feel it.
I sense that you do. Hey, you're coming off a bye week. It is an oddly timed bye week. We're only 2 games into the season. How do you turn a bye that early in the year into a positive?
Well, I think you have to. You know, it's you kind of take a look at it, and if you count camp and whatnot, it's a little bit of a halfway point. But you get the schedule, and the bye is when it is, and I thought we, for the most part, we did a good job of kind of taking advantage of it and having a chance to kind of work on some things that, whether it's individually or different groups that we kind of need to clean up or you're going to need throughout the season, and then also a chance to get a little bit of a head start on the upcoming opponent, Notre Dame. But it was the bye comes when it comes, and it's our opportunity to take advantage of it, and I think we did.
What did you need to work on and clean up?
Well, I think that we kind of talked about it as a group. Individually, just wanted each individual to pick 1 or 2 things. Just kind of whether it's a footwork or a technique or some type of skill, and then certainly, there's groups that you want to try to spend a little. Let's be a little bit better on one facet of the game or whatnot. And so it had a chance to kind of clean up some of the things that you wanted to improve upon, and a chance to kind of continue to work on some of those things that you're going to need, not just for the upcoming this week, but you're going to need throughout the season.
I want to ask you about a few things that I would pinpoint after watching you guys early on. One of them would be the passing game. How do you become more explosive in the pass game?
Yeah, I think, a big part of that is you've got to take it when they give you those opportunities. You got to be able to seize it. And yet you also got to be careful, I think, of trying to manufacture it when it's not there. And so, like anything, any explosive, whether it's in the run game or in the pass game, it's kind of what's cool about football is it takes all 11. And so I think that, those will come. I feel confident that way, but you got to be careful that you don't try to just manufacture it and that alone. And so I think that's one way to do it. Just every person's got to be doing their part. And you can also turn, kind of some of those intermediate plays into big explosive with a little bit better timing, a little bit better location, receiver staying up on his feet. So I think there's opportunities to be had. You just got to continue to kind of do the little things and make sure that you're squared away on the details of each play, and I think then the results come from that.
One other thing that stood out to me early, you've had 5 empty red zone trips. You had 3 all of last year. Anything you can pinpoint as to what's going on there?
Yeah, I think, a number of them were just simple exchange problems, whether it's, quarterback to the running back, and it's making sure that you're on the right track. We've turned the ball over in the red zone, and those things alone, are going to make it hard to beat anyone. It's not that you can't win, but it's going to make it that much more difficult. So certainly those are things that, you don't just wait till the bye week. You've got to address those as soon as you can, and hopefully we're progressing there. We need to if we're going to be as good offense as we need to be for this team.
I know you talked about it a bit in your news conference today, but there's going to be so much said and written about you guys going up against Jack Cohn, your former quarterback, this weekend. What's it going to be like to see him on the opposing sideline? Yeah,
there's no question. It's a story, and Jack, was a really good teammate to a lot of the players, and personally, and I think coaches, we appreciated being around him and working with him. And yet, I think it's important, and I've always felt this, that that's what's great about the game of football is it's a team sport. So it's gonna take everyone on Wisconsin to do their best and to beat a very good Notre Dame team. That's what we're working at, and that's the goal and the objective. But certainly, it's a little bit unique facing Jack, and yet I think we got to all approach it as we're playing Notre Dame.
He obviously knows your defense quite well, Paul. How does that impact your approach?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and yet I think that when it comes down to it, he's the quarterback for Notre Dame, and it's how is Notre Dame's offense going to attack our defense. And I think that's, once again, it's not just one person. You know, it's their whole unit, their offensive unit going up against our defensive unit. And so I think that you certainly understand the storyline, but I think it takes more than just one person in the game of football.
To what extent do you talk to the guys about the atmosphere, about playing in an NFL stadium, playing on what's going to be a neutral fan? You know, they're going to be split fans, I should say, kind of 50-50 in this one. What do you say to them about this opportunity?
Well, I think, certainly, we're looking forward to it as players and coaches, and it's a unique opportunity. And I think that's where, I know our kids are excited about it. And anytime you get to play the game, that's something to be excited about. And then when you get to play it against a really good opponent, that's another thing that kind of ramps it up even that much more. And certainly, playing at Soldiers Field in an NFL stadium, there's a lot that goes around surrounding the game, and you want the kids to appreciate that and enjoy it. But I think once it gets going, it comes down to playing the game, and that's where the focus has to be.
Last question here, Paul. I want to leave you with this. As I'm sure you're well aware, Brian Kelly, one win away from passing Knute Rockne as the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. I know you don't want it to happen on your watch on Saturday, but put that accomplishment into perspective, if you would.
Boy, it's, you talk about, we all grew up in Knute Rockne. He means a lot to not just Notre Dame fans, right, to football fans. And obviously it's been impressive what Coach Kelly has done there. And it's, I think it's impressive on a number of, different areas. One, there's longevity, and to be successful over that long a time, I think is also very impressive. And certainly, I'm sure he'd be the first to admit, it takes a lot of guys to win those games. But anytime that you can sustain success, that's impressive. And I would imagine anytime that you can, you're in the same breath of discussion and communication with Knute Rockne, that's pretty special.
No doubt. Paul Chryst, head coach of the Badgers. Hey, I know it's a really busy week for you with a huge game looming. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Big Ten Today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
How awesome was the whiteout on Saturday night in State College? More than 109,000 fans on hand, electric atmosphere. Penn State, of course, pulling out the win, 28-20 over Auburn. So now 7 straight wins for the Nittany Lions going back to last season. Now, to say that game was a rarity would be an understatement. It is just the 5th time ever that a Big Ten team has hosted a ranked SEC team. It's just the 2nd time in the last 30 years. Both of those games, by the way, happened at Beaver Stadium. Just the 3rd ever ranked Big Ten versus ranked SEC matchup on a Big Ten campus. As promised, Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic is here, of course, a contributor to this show every Monday on the Big Ten Network. And Nicole, first question, how do we get more of these? That was great.
That was my main takeaway, too. It was, I would love to have this every single week, please. Please schedule these. And we know that we have some actually on the schedule. Ohio State has a couple teams, Alabama on the schedule, Georgia, Wisconsin's got Alabama. But, for some reason, the SEC doesn't come north, and then the Big Ten doesn't really go south for these games. We've had so many neutral site games over the last, 10, 15 years. But we would love to see this. I felt like when you saw Sean Clifford running around at the end of the game and you felt the crowd from your couch, you're like, this is what college football is. This is what it is. It's not, playing in Jerry World in Dallas.
Right. No, and it's fair to mention, I know certainly we say, well, we'd love it if the bowl games were played in the North, right? Why don't the SEC teams come north to play bowl games? And we talk a lot about that. But the truth of the matter is, in the regular season, the Big Ten doesn't go south either. Michigan has never played a regular season game in an SEC stadium, just to give an example. I mean, these are very rare both ways. And as you mentioned, we have some coming up here. We have Ohio State with a couple very high-profile ones. Alabama and Georgia, you mentioned. Wisconsin's got Alabama as well. So the issue, I think, becomes, can you get those? Can you still do the alliance games that we've got coming up, the ACC and the Pac-12? Is there a way to fit all of that in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the concern and the hope, because if you're talking about an alliance schedule that's 2 games a year where you're going to be playing the Pac-12 and the ACC, that really does cut down on available Saturdays, and also do coaches really want to play that many difficult games in 1 year? But I think you're talking about the top end teams. I mean, I'm hoping Ohio State keeps those games on the schedule, and the Michigans of the world. But it's just weird because, we had Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan played Washington. They were supposed to be better this year. So you have the big games being scheduled, just not against the SEC, which is the interesting one. And that's the league we want to see the top Big Ten teams play against. And we really only get it in bowl games.
Here's the problem to me. It's going to have to come in conjunction with an expanded playoff. Or the committee's going to have to do what they said they were going to do all along, which is reward strength of schedule, which they've never done. And I've talked about this a lot. No 2-loss teams ever gotten in. And until a 2-loss team gets in, you are disincentivized from scheduling these games. But if the playoff's expanded, and if they say strength of schedule matters, then all of a sudden people view it more like they schedule in basketball.
It has to be that the committee does it, though, because it's exactly what you said. Like, how did the basketball committee do it? Well, they actually called coaches and told them you have to schedule this way, and we're going to actually change the metrics so you get more credit for going on the road and winning a game, right? Like, you have to actually do it that way, because even if you go to an expanded playoff, like we've seen all these home and homes, like Ohio State, Georgia, they all got scheduled for after 2026. People are like, all right, an expanded playoff, we'll get more credit for playing these games. If we lose, it won't eliminate us. But you need the committee to actually do that. And I also think one other reason we're seeing these games get scheduled and hopefully kept on the schedule is fans are going to come to those games. And right now, I don't think anyone can take for granted people coming to games in person, especially coming out of a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Ohio State's attendance this weekend. They had the smallest crowd since 1971. So all of a sudden you start to understand that even these programs where the fan bases are rabid and where people live for these games, you have to have quality opponents to get people there. And certainly you look at the scene at Beaver Stadium on Saturday night, and who wouldn't want that? I mean, who would not want that in their stadium? Not everyone can do that. I mean, I understand.
Oh, we all going to have whiteouts?
Yeah, right. I get it. But man, it was great. One of the things I know that really struck you, aside from the fact that the atmosphere was fabulous and the game was tremendous and it just lived up to all the hype, was the play of Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, he was terrific. And I don't know why this happened, but I felt like see, I didn't even have that much I needed to say in these tweets, guys. But we sort of only talked about Chris Olave. We're like, okay, Chris Olave is one of the best receivers in the country, maybe the best. But we did not, for some reason, put Jahan Dotson in that category, and he absolutely is. I mean, we saw him save an interception. We saw him throw a pass that was completed for a first down. They used him on special teams. They clearly want the ball in Jahan Dotson's hand as much as possible.
He was phenomenal. And again, remember, he led the Big Ten in punt return average last year, had a school record for punt return average last year for Penn State, and, of course, a great receiver, led the Big Ten in receiving yards last year, catches of 20 yards or longer. So this is no great shock. He had the amazing catch against Ohio State. And it does feel like right now, I mean, the Heisman race, like...
Who's in it?
If Spencer Rattler was the favorite...
Yeah.
I mean, I found him very underwhelming.
He has been.
Yeah.
It's pretty open. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we thought it was going to be DJ Uiagalelei and Spencer Rattler, and those are offenses that have problems. So why not? Let's throw a receiver in there. Let's throw Jahan Dotson in there.
No, absolutely no reason that he cannot be in that conversation. And again, use him different ways, as you say. Use him on special teams, throw a pass, we have certainly seen receivers can win this award. It's not just a quarterback award anymore. We're going to have more from State College with Big Ten Tailgate going there, presented by Tums. They'll be there on Saturday. Annie Sabo and Brock Vereen on campus. I'll be in studio with Howard and Jerry DiNardo and Joshua Perry. Should be a fabulous seed, 10 a.m. Eastern time right here on the Big Ten Network. What a moment Friday on the pitch. Rutgers topping number 11 Indiana 2-1. First win over a ranked team in 6 years. Forget about beating the Hoosiers. They hadn't scored against them in 6 years. Indiana, of course, the defending national runners-up. So a huge win for Rutgers soccer. And Coach Jim McElderry is kind enough to join us now from Piscataway. And Coach, thanks for taking the time out, basking in the glow of this win. Give people a sense of what it means for a Big Ten team to beat Indiana. I mean, they've won 5 straight Big Ten soccer tournaments. They've lost 3 games in 5 years. I mean, beating Indiana is no small feat.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first off, Dave. Indiana are one of those programs that I think everybody in Division I soccer looks at as kind of the program you're trying to kind of match yourself up against. So going out there in a tough environment, they don't lose very often. Coach Yeagley does a great job. Their players are at the highest level. So for our guys to go out there, compete, especially after being down a goal, come back, score 2 goals on the road, really proud of their effort, their commitment, and trying to follow what we're trying to do here and try to win games the right way, and really proud of the group.
Oh, that's crazy. I mean, 3 conference losses in a handful of years, and you go out and beat that team. Give me a sense of the locker room, what that was like.
Yeah, I think after the game, our guys were just really proud of how many guys also came off the bench to help us win the game. Nico Rosamita comes off the bench to score the game-tying goal. Jackson came back on and scored a great goal. But yeah, they were enjoying the moment after, and meet back at the hotel and enjoy it for a little bit. And we have to turn around quickly, fly home the next day on Saturday, and now we're playing tonight again against a good UPenn team. So we enjoyed it for that evening, but you got to move on quickly. There's so many games coming quick and fast. So we'll try to rest up over the weekend, and now we're back at it again today.
Now, when people think about Rutgers soccer, I know I think about your most prominent alum being Alexi Lalas, of course, one of the most well-known players in U.S. national team history. Have you heard from Alexi on the early success of this team and specifically on that win?
Yeah, Alexi's always been great with us. Lives out on the West Coast now, but follows the program. He always talks about how, coming to Rutgers kind of changed his life, and, he kind of took advantage of a lot of the opportunities that Rutgers gave him, and really, his career has been fantastic, both on the field, but also post his playing career. So he's a great supporter of our program. We've got some great alums. Peter Vermes, a head coach at Sporting Kansas City as well. Among many others. So, really happy that they're enjoying this success, and we want to keep it going. Those guys set the standard for Rutgers soccer with Coach Riasso years ago. So we're trying to kind of remember that history and then try to write our own history.
Well, still undefeated on the year. The next chapters here of that history, how do you start writing them? How do you keep it going here?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to be consistent. We have a good group of guys. I think we're a lot deeper than we've been in the past couple of years, so we have different players stepping up and helping us. And I think in college soccer, the games are close together. You need a squad of players. One day it'll be one player, the next game it'll be somebody else. So you need that. If you don't have that, if you're only playing 11 or 12 players, it just becomes really difficult to win games consistently throughout the season, whether it's in conference or out of conference. So you need that squad. We have that this year, and we're relying on it.
This is your 3rd year at Rutgers. You've been knocking on the door a bit. You were ranked briefly in your first year. You're going to be ranked again this week. How do you kind of get to that level of taking a program which hadn't had that level of success right before you got there and getting to this point? What have been the keys to getting here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think having some of our guys that were on the team when we arrived, guys like Tommy DeVizio, Vince Borden, they bought into what we were trying to sell, and most of it's just about working hard, being good teammates, competing, training hard, getting better every day, and those are kind of little cliches, but they're real, and those guys have bought into it. Our players that we've brought in, we've recruited well. My staff does a great job recruiting players, whether it's mostly in New Jersey, but also outside the state. And those guys have come in and helped us. You need talent. You need guys that are driven to get better, take advantage of some of the facilities we now have at Rutgers with the Rotkin Center that we're based in now. We need those type of players. It's a player's game, soccer, so we're here to kind of facilitate it for them, but you need guys that are hungry to compete and fight, and they've done a great job with it, and we need to keep it going if we want to try to put ourselves on the national scene consistently.
One last question. You haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 2015. How much do you talk about that openly as a goal with this team? Yeah, it's certainly a goal of our players. We know it's not easy. There's a couple of different pathways to do it.
But I think you can't be afraid of having those expectations. If you fall short, then you kind of regroup and you work at them again for the next year. But our team, that is certainly a goal for our team to get this group back and get Rutgers back in the men's soccer NCAA tournament. Really to remind people that we have one of the best programs in the country if we can consistently compete, and we have the facilities to do it. So I think we do talk about it, and it's a driving force of our group.
Jim McElderry, again, congratulations on a huge win over the Hoosiers. I know you got Penn coming up tonight, so best of luck in that game as well. And thanks so much for taking the time to join us. It's not just Rutgers soccer that is hot, by the way. Rutgers football as well. In fact, the Big Ten's two newest members off to a perfect start. Rutgers and Maryland, you see the Terps. They won a road conference game this weekend. Leah Tungabailoa has been great. And how about Rutgers? Found some offense after the D had been so good in the first 2 weeks. Again, they get Michigan this week, so they'll get a slightly different winged helmet than Delaware. It's going to be a bit of a step up in terms of winged helmet quality, but still, Rutgers has been tremendous in year two under Greg Schiano. Nicole is back with me. What are you seeing with these two teams? Let's start with Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really cool to see the 3-0 start. Obviously, they're working towards bowl eligibility. And you see a toughness with this team that wasn't there, and that is a trademark of these Greg Schiano teams. Also, Noah Vedral, he had a really, really good game through the air. And I think, establishing a vertical passing game is going to be really big for them because they have playmakers, they have good running backs, Aaron Cruikshank and special teams. Like, they have all of that. But I think if you can stretch the field, it opens up a lot more. And we started to see that this week, too.
We know they have a good defense, and I think the issue has just been, are they good enough offensively? They've scored a lot of points, but some of that's been deceptive because it's been set up with how good their defense has been. They're averaging more than 40 points a game, and yet offense at times had been a struggle until this Delaware game. As you said, Vedral was fantastic. I mean, he was really good in that game. And so all of a sudden, if you get that going, this is an explosive team, and we saw some of that last year. I mean, they have some guys. You mentioned Cruikshank and Bo Melton and Pacheco. I mean, these are guys who can stretch the field, Nicole. Yeah,
and some of them, like Cruikshank in particular, transfers, right? Like Greg Schiano went straight to the transfer portal, which is what all coaches do these days. But he found some really big impact players within the Big Ten, Vedral as well, right? And these guys have, we see them already. I mean, last year was the pandemic season, but you see that growth and you see the way that he's using them and piecing them together. And obviously they have a tough two-week stretch here with the season, but there's just a lot to like. Like, this is a very solid team. They're not... They would sometimes not be able to win a game that they could win in the previous regime, and you don't feel that way anymore.
It is a big few weeks here. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. So we will find out what they're made of. But it's clear they have a good defense. I mean, one thing that has struck me in watching Big Ten football here over these first few weeks is you're hard-pressed to find Big Ten teams that don't have good defenses. I mean, Illinois, Ohio State, Northwestern.
Yeah.
Other than that, everyone's pretty good on defense. It's weird to say Ohio State's not good on defense. It's very weird to say Northwestern's not good on defense, and so maybe they'll get better because their recent history suggests those are two good defensive programs. Obviously, Northwestern lost a legendary defensive coordinator, and Ohio State's having defensive issues. But other than that, I mean, you go up and down the list. This is a league where when you get into conference play, it's going to be really hard to score. And Rutgers isn't just a good defense. They're a big play defense. They're a sack defense. They're a defense that's going to turn you over.
Yep.
And that's hard to deal with.
Well, this is what Howard was saying, right, about the East? Like, how do you rank the East? 1 to 7.
Right.
It's not as clear cut as it's been in the past because of things like this.
Okay, so what about Maryland?
Well, that's another team that's on 3-0 on the upswing. The biggest thing for Maryland is this is what this program can look like when you don't have devastating quarterback injuries. They actually have consistency at the quarterback position, and it makes such a big difference. Obviously, Talia Tagovailoa is a great quarterback, and we're seeing him grow week to week to week. But they have how many seasons from 2010 to now have they had the same quarterback start every game? None. It's just last year, the pandemic season. I mean, it's just they've had such bad injury luck over the past decade that, it's just been the refrain from the fans, right, has been, Well, if we only had a quarterback, if our quarterback stays healthy, if we don't have to do a scout team linebacker at quarterback, what could our season look like, right?
That was the low.
That was the low.
Yeah,
but
they're
not in that position anymore. And so I think you're able to see, obviously, Raheem Jarrett, like there's just like really exciting players on this roster. Mike Locksley is recruiting the DMV well, but it's really about that consistency at the quarterback position.
And they're also good on defense. And that has been elusive. And they've given up 41 points now. In 3 games, they forced 6 turnovers. They forced 4 turnovers all of last season. And then they are not making mistakes.
Yep.
I mean, Leah, we saw him at camp, and honestly, he made an egregious mistake when we were at camp. Threw an interception in a situation where you're like, man, if he's going to make decisions like that, it's going to be a really long year. But yet to throw an interception this year, he's 3rd in the nation in completion percentage, and he's dynamic. And then Fleet Davis gives them an option at running back. Are they great at running back? They're not great. They're good enough, and particularly when you've got Demas and Jarrett. Again, this is a team that can be a quick strike team. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. And I think that's the same with Rutgers, right? Like, we're enjoying watching these teams, and you're seeing that they can be explosive. They can make big plays. They can get big plays. And last season, you had glimpses of this. They each had a couple of moments or a couple games where you didn't think that Rutgers or Maryland was going to win. And it's really cool to see that develop because this is the toughest division in college football. And, like, what is success? Is success finishing 4th in your division, right? Like, it's just so hard to measure that growth. And I think you're seeing it here, and you're also seeing these teams positioning themselves well to be bowl eligible, to get those extra practices, like to continue to take those steps. But I just think it's going to be really fun to watch as we get into conference play because these are not pushover teams.
No, they're not. I mean, it's funny because usually we go into a year and we say the East is Ohio State's.
Yep.
And then where's the pecking order from there? And man, the West, you just throw them all into a hat. They're all pretty good. And let's figure out how it goes. And it just feels like it's the opposite this year, whereas it's the East where you just have no idea where this thing's going. And you can make an argument that all of these teams have the potential to compete at the very top of the division.
Yeah, and I like that.
I love it. It's great for us.
Yeah, it's great.
You kidding me?
It's great to not pencil all this stuff in.
Yeah.